So as we start coming into these positions, we start setting up our side control, we start setting up our knee to belly options, we start setting up our chokes. There's a lot of common mistakes that we tend to make based off of who we're going with. Everybody's going to be different, but what we want to do is want to keep our positions relatively the same regardless of the size of person that we're going against and the aggressive nature that they're coming at us with. So a couple of things that I want to just discuss and just bring to mind. As we come into this side control, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things to not do initially when you start working with this is trusting your balance. So as we're coming in, we got our cross face, I'm controlling his hip, is not putting my knees on the ground. What ends up happening when I put my knees on the ground is it relieves pressure on him, allowing him to feel a little more comfortable than he should. I need to make sure that my knees are off the ground. And notice how I'm kind of driving weight into him. So if you were to see my weight, I'm not going across his body, I'm not coming straight down, I'm going at a 45-degree angle. So I'm kind of like compressing his ribs and his chest into his sternum, kind of inhibiting his ability to properly breathe. So as we're here, I'm driving my pressure into him, and I can even use shoulder. I can use my hips to kind of augment. If he's using a lot of hip pressure, I'll kind of drive my weight towards his hips, maintaining my arm to keep him from being able to recover his guard. But I'm still here too, so if he gets really strong and he starts to push towards me, I'm going to flare even harder. And notice that I don't have to switch my hips in order to keep his upper body away from me. So if he's turning towards me really hard, I can still do this and be just as effective without having to loosen up on his hips. And that may give me the option to kind of control both the hips and the shoulder lines, which is what I find that you're going to need to control throughout the match. Typically you can control one, very rarely can you control both effectively. So that's kind of one of those first things that I like to address. The second thing is once we come into our knee to belly option, don't forego this grip. So as we come in, we're on your knee to belly option. Again, make sure we're not in the soft part of the belly, that we are controlling here in the ribs, but I don't like to loosen this. If I'm grabbing closer to his shoulder on my side, as he's turning towards me, it's not going to make it as effective. So as I go deeper into that lapel, this is what gives me the leverage to be able to kind of turn my elbow out and keep him from turning towards me. So as he starts to kind of react to both this crossface and my knee and his ribs, this arm is really going to come into play. This arm is here too, and here's a couple of little pointers that I'd like to give you as we go into this position. We've discussed this arm. We have not discussed this arm. And we did discuss using this as a pin to that shoulder. But one of the things that I can also do, and one of the things that I like, is I like to staple from time to time, depending on how effective he is with this arm. So if I'm here and it's really giving me trouble to keep my hip away, I'm going to turn my hip and I'm going to staple. And I can be here. This is completely fine. It does the same exact thing by pinning this shoulder, keeping him from being able to turn away, and it immobilizes his arm just long enough for you to be able to get what you want to do. The last pointer that I'd like to give you is we start setting up our chokes. Whether we're using this lapel, whether we have our wrist control here, remember that our chokes are set and effective here. This is really where we get a lot of our effectiveness from our chokes, that we're moving those hands away from each other, not our wrists. Our elbows are constantly pinching in because we're talking about a Brabo choke or a reverse baseball choke or a baseball choke itself, but we're going to end up moving our wrists away. That gives us a lot of effectiveness to push those wrists to start constricting that blood flow to the brain, which restricts that oxygen. Okay? So as we're here, just make sure that no matter what type of choke you're doing, that we're going to keep our wrists flat with each other. We're not going to start to kind of open up those wrists, so we're not choking with the back of our wrists, but actually the bone right here as we start moving away. Okay?